Hello, everybody. My name is Miruna Meirosho. I represent Curta Publishing, and I'm really happy that we have Carl Honoré here. He's the author of two of our books, Boulder and In Praise of Slow, which in Romanian would be Elogiul Lentorii. Carl was here in Bucharest and also in Cluj last year, and we had a great conversation about these two books. And I'm glad that during the Elephant online book fair, we can also have this talk about the books. So, Carl, hello.
Hi, hello from London.
Your books, both In Praise of Slow and Boulder, are inspired by real needs of people around the globe. But as we can see, we are now facing great changes. So my question for you would be if these concepts in your books are challenged by this global pandemic.
I think that my books are probably more relevant now than they were before the pandemic. Let's take the first book first, In Praise of Slow, which is about the benefits of doing things more slowly, of not rushing through your life, of living each moment rather than counting it. And that was something that people were aspiring to do and doing more and more of before the pandemic. But then, of course, the pandemic shut the whole world down, right? It forced all of us to go through a massive workshop in slowness. Now, the downside, of course, is that we're all suffering. This is a terrible catastrophe for the world. But on the other side, I think there is a silver lining here, which is that many of us are learning the lessons of good slow. You know, we've had a few weeks now when we are experiencing what it feels like to consume less, to do less, to rush less. And I think a lot of us are discovering that that's actually quite nice, you know, that there's something about this slowness that's good. And that when the pandemic ends and we're able to go back out into the world again, I think a lot of people will take these lessons with them and say, you know what, I want to live a different life. I want to live a life where every moment of my day is not a race against the clock. I want to do less, but I want to do it better. I want to, live more slowly and live more fully. So I think that, and I'm noticing actually on social media that so many people who have read my book before are reading it again now or doing book clubs on it, or people who haven't read it are coming to it now because we're all going through this moment of mandatory slowness. My second book, Boulder, Making the Most of Our Longer Lives, which is about our attitudes to aging. And what I've tried to do in that book is tackle the cult of youth and take down the idea that younger is always better, and to create a more honest and more realistic and more nuanced approach to aging. So understanding that as we grow older, some things get worse. Of course they do, but many things stay the same and some things even get better. And I think what the pandemic is doing is reminding us that we're all in it together in a sense, right? That yes, aging, especially as you get very much older, makes you more vulnerable to disease and of course to COVID-19 especially. But it's also a reminder that we are all aging, right? So if you're 21 years old now, in 50 years, you'll be 71, right? You may be the person who's more vulnerable to this pandemic. So one of the things that I'm looking at in the book Boulder is the importance of bringing the generations back together, because for so long, people of different ages have been separated into different silos and not having friends or much contact with people of different ages. And that allows negative stereotypes to grow and flourish. And I hope that one of the benefits of this pandemic is that we will be reminded that we have so much in common, right? This is the first time in probably 100 years that the whole world is going through exactly the same thing at the same time, of all ages. So my hope is that we'll come out of this with a more open and hopeful idea about aging.
Okay. Let's go back to In Praise of Slow a little bit. So this is a book about how we should enjoy every moment in our lives and how we should fight with this crazy rhythm in the society. You said that we were indeed slowed down by this pandemic, and we no longer have this race against the clock. But a lot of people experience this period very differently. And do you really consider that we understand how to be slow?
I think more and more of us do, but many of us still don't. And I think this pandemic is especially could be very difficult and challenging because it's changing our relationship with time. Time feels very weird to us now. Sometimes it seems fast, sometimes it seems slow. And I think that's disconcerting, especially when we're accustomed to so much of our time being controlled by other people, by our work schedule, by our boss, by our department, by all the things that happen outside our homes. But now at home, we have much more control. Most of us have more control over our own time. And I think that's scary at first. It's if you're used to having someone telling you what to do with your time, suddenly if you have control, you panic and think, well, what do I do with this time? I don't know how to deal with it. But as we've been now in the pandemic lockdown for 8 weeks, I think more and more people are learning how to use the time. So they're thinking, well, now that I finally have the power to decide my own rhythms of the day, I'm going to change how my day looks. So maybe people are getting up a little later in the morning, going to bed later at night, or they're eating at different times of day, or they're working on maybe creative work a couple hours in the morning because that works for them, and then more mindless work in the afternoon, or just using that temporal autonomy. I think more and more people are finding that having control over your time is a pretty wonderful thing. And I do suspect that when we go back out into the world, people will want to carry on having more of that control. They won't want to give back all the power that they've gained, because once you have control over your own time, you can live at your own rhythm. And that is the key to slow. It's the key to living well and, being healthy, happy, creative, all the things everybody wants to be.
The statistics, however, say that once we got into this work from home routine, for people who didn't used to do this before, the time they spend working in front of the computer is even bigger than so they spend more time in front of the computer at home than they did before, because it's very different for them to separate their working time from their personal time. So this flexibility is still pretty difficult to manage. So what would be your advice related to your book, In Praise of Slow, that you would give to a person who is now working from home and staying in front of the computer even more than he or she did before?
I think that's true for people who have less experience of working remotely or from home. It is difficult. Suddenly you have all this freedom and you don't know what to do. So many people are spending more time online or in front of computers. What can you do to stop that? I think the key word here is discipline, right? Or two words, discipline and structure. And I think it's so important to create, now that we've lost the structure from outside the home, to create our own structures and discipline in the home. So set aside certain times when you say, okay, I'm going to be in front of the computer screen this times, and then I'm going to stop, right? I'm literally going to switch off the computer. I'm not going to leave it on in the kitchen or in the bedroom. I'm going to shut it down, and I'm going to go off and do something that does not involve looking at the screen. So, play around with what that looks like for you. It might be, I don't know, a couple hours in the evening. It might be an hour in the morning. You might say after 6 p.m., no computer. Just, experiment and find what works right. But make sure you've got times when even if you have to set an alarm clock to remind yourself to switch off certain times. I think it's also important in wherever possible in the home to divide certain areas off and dedicate them to different activities. So if you can at all have a place that is permanently where you go to work, whether it's a bedroom or another room or a corner of a part of a room or something, try to keep the work there. Try to avoid letting it spill into the rest of the house so that before you know it, you're working in the bathroom or the bedroom or the garden. I mean, sometimes it's okay to move around, but try generally to keep it in one place, because that will make it easier for you to switch gears, to have your fast moment on the computer working, and then slow down and go somewhere else. If you don't have the visual temptation of seeing the computer there or your workstation.
Okay. Anyway, In Praise of Slow is a book that comes very useful these days when we need to accept the slowness in our lives. But let's go to Bolder, your second book from Cortavecchi Publishing. This is a book that brings a new perspective to what aging is, and also it inspires a lot of people. So tell me more about your book. What is ageism, and why should we fight it?
Well, ageism is the the stereotyping and discriminating against people on age, how old they are. And ageism affects all of us, young and old, but it weighs more heavily on those of us, in later life, because ageism has got tangled up with the cult of youth, the idea that younger is always better. And the result of this is that aging, just the idea of growing older, elicits fear, shame, guilt, disgust, and a lot of denial in people, right? We just don't want to think about growing. We just don't even want to go there, right? We just want to pretend that we're not aging. And this takes a toll on us in so many ways. For a start, it makes us unhappy, right? I mean, we're living longer lives in Romania and everywhere than ever before, but have we ever felt more miserable about growing older? And ageism also separates us. It pushes the generations apart with negative stereotypes. And ageism also hurts us in ways that we often don't even realize, because the science shows very clearly that if you hold a negative view of aging, if you believe that growing older will be bad and you worship youth, then you're going to age less well. You're going to suffer from cognitive and physical decline more likely. You're increasing your chances of getting dementia, and you're even likely to die younger, up to 7.5 years younger. So in other words, ageism, buying into the cult of youth, is the ultimate act of self-harm. So it seems to me that at a time when lives are longer than ever before, we're just doing aging all wrong, right? We've got this old idea somehow, the cult of youth idea, that up to the age of 30, 35, after that, it's all downhill, right? But when most of us now are living to 80, 85, even later, that means that we're spending, 50 years of our lives feeling bad about growing older, which is ridiculous, right? Especially at a time when science, medicine, just general knowledge, technology is helping us age better than we've ever aged before. I mean, the average 65-year-old today around most of the Western world is in way better shape than 20 years ago, right? Our bodies, our minds. I mean, I look at my parents, 79 and 85. They're having the time of their lives, right? They're traveling, they exercise, they socialize, they do volunteer work, they do work for pay when they feel like it, and you go back one generation, and I tell you, their parents were not like that at all. So the world has changed tectonically, demographically, in every way. The last thing that has to change now is our attitudes to aging, right? They need to catch up with the good news story that's out there about aging.
That's true. And what I love about your book is that you also come with a lot of useful tactics that we can actually use in order to feel good about our age, no matter what that age is. And but two of the main things that you recommend to our parents, for example, is traveling and socializing. This period is making these things very difficult.
Very difficult. Yeah.
Very difficult.
Yeah.
So do you have an advice here? Like, I don't know, two things that older people who are forced to isolate themselves in this period can do so that they would feel better?
Yeah, I mean, obviously traveling is off the menu for now, yes. But socializing is still there. It's a different kind of socializing. It's what you and I are doing now through a screen. It's not the same. It's not as good as being in real world situations with other human beings, which is what we need. It's we're social creatures. We need that. It's good for our health, physical and cognitive. But Zoom, Skype, FaceTime, all these things are they're a decent substitute, right? And I think it's very easy for people of all ages, not just older people, to get isolated, especially in this pandemic, just to feel like, oh, do I want to get on another Zoom? I mean, I'm not saying you've got to spend 5 hours a day Zooming with people, but just make sure at least 2 or 3 times a day, or even just once a day, at least you get online and have some kind of social interaction with somebody. And the technology is a lot easier now for people who haven't maybe got experience with it to work out. So I think the social thing is very important. I give another couple of suggestions quickly as well for people. And this is, again, for people of all ages, right? Because this is the key thing. We're all aging and we can all do it better. And the tips that I give for aging are just as good for people who are 25 as they are for people who are 75. So another very important tip is, and we can keep this going, and it's even maybe more important in pandemic times, is keep up a sense of humor, right? We know that laughter, seeing the funny side of things, is good for our immune system. It boosts our health. It's good for our emotional well-being. So try and find the funny side. I mean, it's sometimes hard to find the funny side of the pandemic, but there are jokes out there. Maybe watch the news a bit less, right? The news is so depressing. I watch the news once a day now. I keep up, with what's going on online, but I just don't want to hear the same Groundhog Day, recordings
Yes.
of just deaths. But now I'm watching a lot more kind of comedy specials on YouTube and Netflix and stuff. And it's just so important, I think, to keep laughing, right? There's an old saying, I think it's from George Bernard Shaw, who said, you don't stop laughing because you grow old. You grow old because you stop laughing, right? So don't stop laughing would be another tip. And then a third one, just quickly, would be to carry on learning, right? This is another thing that keeps us fresh, keeps us recharged, keeps us well at every age, is exposing yourself to new things, novelty. So this is a time when, you could do an online course or go to learn a new craft, or I'm learning how to juggle, right? Using,
Oh, wow.
online. I'm not good enough to show you yet, but maybe next time we talk, I'll bust
Okay, I will
a
give you
trick or
some
two.
time.
And that's something we can all do in our pandemic homes, right? Is find something new to expose ourselves to, whatever age we are, to keep sharp, and keep well, and keep our chins up.
Yes, that's true. So as a conclusion, we recommend this book to all the people, no matter if they're 30 or 60 or 40, because we are aging even since we're children, right?
We're all doing it. Yeah. And in fact, I'm noticing that when I hear from readers that the range of people reading it is enormous. I mean, I think the oldest reader I got was 101, but the youngest I've heard so far was 23. So it's a big, and actually, just to finish off, I wish that I'd written my book Bolder 20 years ago. I'm now 52. I wish I'd written it because I would have saved myself 2 decades of pointless worry, angst, shame. I would have, but I couldn't, right? Because I didn't know all the things I know now to write it, which is the irony. But you don't have to write this book; you can just read it.
Exactly. We can read it, and thank you for writing it. It's really, really useful. And also, I will recommend your TED Talks to everybody. So just go on reading about Boulder and In Praise of Slow. And you can also find these books on the special section of the website elefant.ro. And well, thank you so much, Carl, for being here and for coming to Romania again in a different way. And yes.
Thank you. I've enjoyed it, and I've got very fond memories of Romania, and I would love to come back very soon. So
yes,
let's make that a deal.
Everything will be possible soon.
Yeah, it will. It will.
Okay. Thank you very much. Well,
thank you. Bye-bye.
See you. Bye.